And greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, in the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you. And by the way, tip of the hat and greetings to our Anchorage listeners on News Talk 1080 KUDO, Kudo, Alaska's progressive voice, who are now joining us live. We welcome your calls. Our number 866-987-THOM. And you're welcome to drop into our live chat room now that you're listening live. We've had a couple of stations flip us live recently, which is really nice. And if you're listening live, drop into our chat. Although there's people hanging out in our chat room 24/7, but it's particularly fun during the live show at thomhartmann.com. It's free. No big deal. And you do have to sign up for it, but we don't sell emails or anything. You won't get spammed, nothing like that. It's just to keep out the trolls, as it were. I mean, you have to have some kind of a system. And next week I will be in Alaska. This is a gig that's one night only at the Anchorage Aviation Heritage Museum. Excuse me. A dinner buffet is included in the ticket price. It's going to be catered by Blues Central. Tickets are $25 in advance, $30 at the door. You can log on to kudo1080.com for more information about that. So it should be a lot of fun. I will be there. You be there too. A lot going on in the world. Intel, the subject of a serious antitrust fine coming from the European Union, and apparently some nasty business practices they've been engaged in. Although, not much going on in the United States, although the Obama administration says they're going to do something about this. The Business Roundtable says we're going to spend whatever it takes to defeat corporate tax return. They've already spent more than $13 million on lobbying Congress last year, and so far this year has spent $1.2 million. The Financial Times editorializing how this is the title of one of the lead op-eds in the Financial Times. This is from last Wednesday. How tax havens helped create a crisis. Dan Gaynor, the vice president and T. Boone Pickens fellow of the Business and Media Institute, businessandmedia.org, a conservative think tank, on the line with us. Hey, Dan, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure, and welcome to your new listeners.
Well, yeah, indeed. And Dan, and thanks for the shout out to them, to the folks in Anchorage. Something that baffles me. We've met a few times. My sense of it is that you're not a multimillionaire. You're not a rich guy.
That would be the most true thing you are likely to say today, Thom.
Okay. Then why don't you join the rest of us in pushing back against the people who employ you, who are paying you to go out and shill for tax havens?
Well, first of all, no one's paying me to go out and shill for tax havens. What we do, we actually have those things called principles, which I think you do too. We don't agree on them, but we do have them. And the whole point here is this is going after tax havens is bad policy. It's ultimately going to hurt American business, cost more money, cost jobs, cost us at a time of economic difficulty.
Now, let me just share with you a one sentence from the Financial Times, from this op-ed by Saul Picciotto, who is a emeritus professor at Lancaster University, senior advisor to the Tax Justice Network, and a regular commentator in the Financial Times, which is a relatively conservative and very pro-business newspaper that I read daily. He says, for multinationals and rich investors, the point is the same. Returns on financial transactions are ultimately taxed at a low or zero rate. This is, after he goes through how all these tax shelters came to be as a result of deregulation in the 1970s, and how wealthy individuals and multinational corporations have invented whole new systems to basically avoid paying taxes. But here's the important thing. He says, the point for multinationals and rich investors is the same. Returns on financial transactions are ultimately taxed at low or zero rate, making them far more profitable than genuine business endeavors. In other words, we have transnational corporations, multinational corporations, and wealthy individuals who are making more money with money than they are making things. How can that be good for any economy anywhere in the world, Dan Gaynor?
Well, what happens is you end up with politicians setting rules. And inevitably, when you do that, they mess with the marketplace. When you have politicians messing with the marketplace, businesses do the only thing they can do, which is they try to figure it out. that ends up being, people say these are, they figure out loopholes in a tax rule. No, you create a tax rule. It's my job as a businessman, and frankly, we all do it in our own lives. It's our job to pay as little tax as we can legally pay. It's our responsibility. You're not supposed to pay more than you're supposed to pay. In fact, if you pay more than you're supposed to pay, IRS actually redoes your taxes and says, hey, and refunds it.
So by your logic, then, if the government says we're going to no longer allow transnational corporations, we're no longer going to allow Halliburton to call themselves a Cayman Island corporation and pay no taxes in the United States, we're simply not going to allow that. That becomes the new rule. Then you're just fine with that Halliburton now has to pay U.S. taxes.
But then you have to look, what impact does that have?
It means that now the federal government's budget deficit goes down.
Well, but at the same, not at the cost of business. This goes back to one of these things, one of the great lies of the Obama administration, which is they're only going to raise taxes on people who make above a certain point. But they keep doing all sorts of things that are designed to raise taxes and basically raise taxes on everybody. Because if you raise tax on a business that does business or has shareholders, that ripples through the whole economy. More than 50% of the people in this country own stocks. You raise taxes on business, that raises tax on 50+% of the people.
Dan, those first of all, those people are not, the vast majority of those people, the average working people who own stocks, own them in a 401k. They're not paying taxes on those anyway, number one, because those are tax deferred or tax sheltered. And number two, the percentage, the amount of stock that they own is pretty minimal. And number three, their interests are not the same as the interests of the multimillionaires and the transnational corporations, who are the ones who want to keep tax havens in place. Yeah, I still don't understand. How is it that a corporation that is doing business in the United States, let's take Halliburton as an example, or Kellogg Brown and Root as an example. There's a corporation doing business in the United States. It's headquartered in the United States. It's actually making billions of dollars in profit, but from money that is paid by the taxpayers. It's got government contracts, and they say, oh, we're actually a Cayman Island corporation because we have a post office box in the Cayman Islands. Therefore, we don't have to pay our share of the cost of the education for the workers that we hire. We don't have to pay our share of the police protection that we enjoy. We don't have to pay our share of all of the infrastructure, which is the federal government, which is paying for their existence. How is that reasonable, fair, or appropriate?
Well, again, when you set up these tax rules, you encourage companies to use them. That's what they've done.
Right, and what they're talking about, and these tax rules basically took place in the late 1970s and the early 1980s during the Thatcher and Reagan administrations, in large part, that allowed
on Brown and Root or Halliburton or whoever. It's going to cost the corporate ownership here in the country. It's going to cost jobs. It's going to hurt. How
is it going to cost jobs? If KBR is given the job of feeding 1,000 troops, they can do it they can feed 1,000 troops with there's a certain amount of labor that's going to be needed. There's a certain amount of material, and if they can make a profit, then Dick Cheney gets richer, as he has.
We had a conversation a long time ago where you agreed that basically when you raise the cost of something, raise the cost of minimum wage, you raise how much that is, you also cost jobs.
No, I disagree.
When you raise taxes on these companies, it's going to cost their bottom line. All companies, when it costs their bottom line, they roll it back to the consumer, or they
roll it back to their stockholders and to their CEOs. You've got CEOs who are making hundreds of millions of dollars. These guys can pay their friggin' taxes.
They do pay their. That's a totally different thing. Now you're talking about individual taxes versus the corporate taxes, and the CEOs are paying their taxes.
The CEOs maybe. Well, first of all, I would submit to you that the CEOs are not paying their taxes either, because they're making use of these tax shelters and their pension things and all. David K. Johnston was on our program yesterday talking about all the ways that if you're a CEO, you can game the system, but you can't if you're an average worker. But it just blows my mind, Dan.
You were citing an economist. Let me go back to one who's actually on our board, Dan Mitchell from Cato.
We got half a minute here.
That's okay. I'm just going to read one sentence. It's a big piece of what the president's proposing. Not everything we're talking about here, but a big piece of it. It's talking about the notion of ending what's known as deferral for U.S. companies, or severely restricting it. And that basically means it's a tax increase for these companies. And when you increase taxes in a bad economic time, and we're still not out of the bad economic time, you hurt jobs. and it ripples through the economy.
I don't see what's wrong with giving with people, with businesses paying their fair share of the commons. Dan, do you have an opinion on this?
Fair to say, fair is open to interpretation.
Do you have an opinion on this Intel fine in Europe?
I think you're ahead of me on that story.
Okay, alrighty. Well, thanks for dropping by, Dan.
Thank you.
Good talking with you. Dan Gaynor, businessandmedia.org is the website, and we will be right back. I want to get into what's going on with Intel, tell you all about that story, too. Well, stick around.